You can attack Rachel Zegler all you want, it only makes her stronger. The internet is absolutely obsessed with the new Snow White movie for some godforsaken reason, mainly because it's doing very badly, and some people are convinced it's star Rachel Zegler's fault because she made some posts about Palestine. But what's really going on? What did she actually say? And what's the real reason this film is box office poisoned apple? We have all the info for you right here on Scroll Deep, the show that keeps up with internet nonsense so you don't have to. And before we continue, make sure you hit follow so you're the first to know about all the latest internet nonsense. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who has the lowest box office returns of all? Why, it's the new live-action Snow White, which is doing very badly with audiences. And instead of not caring about this at all because we're adults, people are once again, sadly, making this a culture war issue for a whole host of messy reasons. And the star, Rachel Zegler, is the one getting the most flack. So let's start with the simple question, why is this film not doing very well? And I can tell you, it's because it's not very good. That's the reason. It's not a very good film. And it also inexplicably has a budget estimated around $250 million, which is astoundingly high. Movies did not used to cost this much. I think even like 5-10 years ago, movies didn't cost this much. If a movie costs $250 million, you have to make so much money to make that money back. Where was that money going, by the way? Look at this stuff. It's not going on the CGI. It's just seemingly not a very good movie, judging by the reviews from critics and audiences alike. Sometimes a movie is not very good, and that's absolutely fine. But that is not what a lot of grown men on the internet think. They are convinced that this movie is doing badly because of Rachel Zegler for a few reasons. So let's run through chronologically. First up, there were some comments she made before the film came out about how Snow White in this film would be more empowered than the previous incarnation, and how it's not the 1930s anymore. In fact, she said, quote, "It's no longer 1937 when the original film came out. She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be." Which naturally annoyed a good portion of people online who really want it to be the 1930s and seem to be trying very hard to get us there. Here's the thing, I don't think these comments are interesting or surprising at all. That is literally what every single actor says when they do a remake. They're always like, it's a new take. It's not like the original character, because they can't be like, it's exactly the same, because then you wouldn't go and see it, would you? You can't be like, we've made a carbon copy of the original film, because then people will just watch the original film, not getting mad about a children's film. That's tennis. If you go through every single, even the Disney remakes, you go through every single remake and look at the interviews, all of them are like, it's a different kind of Belle, it's a different kind of Mufasa or whatever. But judging from the YouTube thumbnails from people called the Drunk Rant Man or whatever, you would think she had personally punched every audience member in the face. Also, that comment about how she's not gonna be saved by a prince, that comment actually came from Gal Gadot.
That is
not gonna be saved by the prince.
She's not gonna be saved by the prince, and she's not gonna be dreaming about true love.
There's also the fact that Rachel Zegler is of Colombian descent, and that enraged a lot of people whose hobby is race. What are you into? Oh, I like model trains. Cool. What are you into? Mostly obsessing about race. And so everyone has just put the weight of this film and the failure of this film, which by the way, they were hoping this film did badly. They've put all of that negative energy on Rachel. Anyway, the bad buzz continued around the production of this film thanks to reshoots, rewrites, the questionable choice to use CGI for the Seven Dwarves instead of using actual actors, which was apparently because of Peter Dinklage, the actor who's known from Game of Thrones and lots of other roles. He said in 2022, "It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way," referring to them casting Rachel as Snow White, "but then you're still making that effing backwards story about 7 dwarves living in a cave together." So off the back of those comments, it seems that Disney then decided to not cast actors and instead to use CGI to try and deal with that, which only seemed to anger both audiences because the CGI they created is terrifying, but also angered a lot of actors with dwarfism because they wanted that work and that was just taken away from them. Also, they don't live in a cave. They live in a nice house. They do work in a cave, mining. Also, an interesting interpretation from Disney there, because I think basically what he was saying was like, why must we have these kind of regressive roles for people like me? What if we had better roles? Or what if we made the role within Snow White better? And Disney was like, good point. None of you will be in this film. Continuing the timeline of controversy, Rachel later made some online posts, some against Donald Trump, which she was forced to walk back, and she also has repeatedly made posts in support of Palestine, and it was these Palestine posts that got people really mad. So mad, in fact, that one of the producers, Mark Platt, flew across the country to her to try and get her to take her post down, and she, to her credit, didn't, because that's crazy behavior. Seems like a good use of time and resource for a movie producer. People are very mad that she said all this stuff that's pro-Palestine. Now, the elephant in the room is that the other star of the film is Gal Gadot, who is both an ardent and outspoken defender of Israel, having also served in the IDF, but also someone whose acting ability is debated, shall we say. Particularly in this film, clips of her performance from this film have been discussed online. But her comments about Israel and all of that, none of that seemingly has been criticized by the production. She hasn't been made to take any comments down. There seems to be a bit of a hypocrisy here. No producer was flying across the country to make her take down tweets. So it feels like there's a bit of a bias. And there's also an opinion now that it's Gal's performance in the film that is the real reason people are not turning up to this film, because it is a really astounding performance. Now, one person who's weighed into this, who probably shouldn't, is Jonah Platt, the brother of Ben Platt, the man who made this face, who is the son of Platt Sr., the person who flew across the country to yell at Rachel Zegler. Someone said to Jonah, I can't believe your dad did this. And he responded, quote, "You really want me to do this? Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP, with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family." Okay, his kids are all like 25, 30? Do they all live in a cottage together and go mining? Like, what is this? Left his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million contract to get paid and do publicity for. A lot to break down there. First of all, if you're using the sentence, he had to reprimand a 20-year-old, that doesn't make her sound bad in that sentence. That makes you sound nuts. Also, I love the implication here of like, you've signed a contract, so you have to shut up and not have opinions. Not great, kind of saying the quiet part loud. This is called adult responsibility and accountability, and her actions clearly hurt the film's box office. Won't someone please think of the box office? I've got more here. Unprofessionally, I'm going to read this off my phone. He said, "Free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions." This part is absolute BS. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues, crew, and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged, and it's been pointed out a lot. If you are one of the blue-collar workers, as he patronizingly puts them, you don't make your money from the box office of the film. Those people are paid up front for a day's work. There is no movie producer on the planet that is giving the people who do the lighting on a film a cut of the box office. That money is going straight to the producers. It doesn't actually matter if a film does well or not for the crew. Obviously, it's good for the industry in general if a film does well, but don't try and use working people as a shield. They've made their money. Also, apparently Disney hired a social media guru to vet all her social media posts in the run-up to the film's release. Sounds good, sounds healthy. Under Biden, there was no social media people vetting people's speech. But under woke Donald Trump, you can't say anything anymore. But people have also stepped in to defend her, like Pedro Pascal, a man who simply cannot miss, who called her an icon in an Instagram story post. Anna Smith, a film critic and host of the Girls on Film podcast, also said, quote, "Zegler pointed out that times and attitudes have changed and that the new Snow White has been adapted for the current age. This is the case with many remakes and reboots, many of which do not make headlines with comments about woke culture." Exactly, that's exactly what I said. Like, why is she the one who is singled out? So, what should we do now? Hopefully move on. I mean, Rachel Zegler, to her credit, is just kind of bulletproof to this stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it really hurts to have a lot of people yelling at you online, having your employer yell at you and all this stuff. But she seems quite resilient. She's a very online person, and I think she's gonna be fine, and good for her. The film, you know, hey, maybe when like half term comes, the film will make more money. I do think this might be one of the last gasps of like hysterical anti-woke culture. This thing of like every Daily Mail headline is like, woke dolphin eats a hot dog. Like, I think people are just so bored of this stuff. And it's also become so truly meaningless. Like, none of these words mean anything anymore. And no one even really knows why they're mad. Like, it's a movie about two heterosexual people who fall in love. It's like, what do you want? But what do you make of all this? Do you think Rachel Zegler should be sent to prison? Do you think Gal Gadot's performance should be celebrated? Perhaps with enough champagne to fill the Nile.
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
Now we come to the secret question for people who've made it all the way to the end. If you had to define yourself, would you say that you are grumpy, sleepy, bashful, Donna, Blitzen, Red Ranger, Scooby, Shaggy? Let me know in the comments down below which of them you are. And also today on the time of recording is Trans Day of Visibility, so happy TVOV to all. Stay visible.